Welcome to part 2 of my programming series. In part 1, I covered all things volume with manipulation and adjusting in day-to-day, week-to-week, and block-to-block. And this time we're going to really dive into intensity, which is where I think a lot of more of what I do in the sense of changing variables on a daily, weekly, and block-to-block basis is where a lot of the adjustments I make are coming from, and where I look to more so progressively overload and change things consistently to be able to see and produce adaptations. So if you haven't watched part 1, I definitely would recommend doing so. That's going to kind of help to tie together everything I say today. And there's some things that probably I said in there that are going to help to understand why I'm saying things here. So I definitely go back and watch that. But even with that, there's still going to be a lot of information here. And you're going to be able to take a lot away from it. And the main things we're going to cover is 1, how do I adjust intensity on a daily basis? So like looking at a workout, how can we manipulate and adjust intensity just within that workout in the progression model of that? How can we do that on a weekly basis where we're looking at primary, secondary, and tertiary days? And how can we do that within a block, looking at week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4? And then lastly, we'll wrap up looking more so at like accessories. I think that's something that's underutilized and underappreciated with a lot of powerlifting coaches and athletes, is just throwing accessories in there without much thought. Whereas if you were programming for a bodybuilder, there would be a lot more thought into it. And in my opinion, well, why not? Like, that's the point. We have them in there. We're trying to bodybuild and produce adaptations with them and progress. So why not put as much thought and effort into those too? So I want to give some ideas of kind of how I program those accessories with intensity adjustments to be able to help produce the adaptations we want. And then lastly, kind of go over some examples. Take some examples of some of the athletes I have, and you can kind of see everything wrapped up into a program of kind of how we're able to adjust intensity to produce adaptations, control fatigue, and to create new stimulus. So there's many reasons I look more to intensity as the main things I manipulate on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and block-to-block basis more than volume, which I talked about, like I said, more so in part 1. But one of the biggest things just comes down to, I will say that intensity is the most important aspect of powerlifting. Some people may disagree with that statement, but I'm just going to provide some analytical and experiential evidence. You will find a litany of different protocols and ideas and thought process when it comes to volume: high volume, high frequency, low frequency. There's a whole spectrum of what people do and see results. There is only one thing that every single powerlifter who has ever seen progress does, and that's lift heavy weight. Doesn't matter. Some people get progress doing low volume. Some people do progress doing high volume. Some people do 4 days a week benching. Some ways do 1 day a week benching. And while you may argue something is more optimal or not, there's not a single one of those people that just lifted really, really, really light weights and got really, really strong. They had to lift heavy. So in my opinion, if there's one variable that we need to prioritize in the sense of getting better as a powerlifter and getting stronger, it's intensity. I think it's also a bit easier to manipulate in a week-to-week basis to be able to manage things. And that's why I'm going to kind of go through and kind of explain what I do. But priority number 1 is I want to manipulate intensity because that is my most important variable. I would care more about lifting heavy weights than trying to push more volume while lifting really, really light weights. So I'm going to make sure to prioritize that as the number 1 thing we're trying to do within a training program. So what is intensity? We also need to define that. When I'm describing intensity throughout this entire video, there's in a sense 2 meanings to it. There's absolute intensity and then there's relative intensity. Absolute intensity is the objective load on the bar. It is 600 pounds. That's the absolute intensity, or the percentage of the load on the weight. Relative intensity is more so RPE in sense of like, how hard is it in relation to what you're doing? So, I mean, doing a single at a 4 RPE is super easy, even though the absolute load is higher than doing a set of 7 at a 9 RPE. So even though the absolute load is higher on the single, it doesn't mean that is harder because the absolute load is higher. We also need to factor in relative intensity. So I'm going to do my best to make sure to clarify that, but also understand that when I say just the word intensity, it could mean one or the other. And with that, I think there's some misconception between relative and absolute intensity in that they are vastly different. Or thinking percentage versus RP. The fact of the matter is they all come together and mean the same thing. And you'll see a lot of when I'm going through things, even if I'm not programming based off of RPE, like I'm not just giving like an RPE top set, because I would say a large portion of the people I train do percentage-based programming in some manner, whether it's entirely percentage-based or at least one of their days is percentage-based. I mean, that is, I have very few people who are just solely RPE-based. So with that though, I still think in terms of relative intensity. I think in terms when I'm programming of, if I want to do a set of 5, I don't think what is the percentage I want to use. I think is what is the relative intensity I want to program at, and then what is the relative, or what is the percentage of that. So that's something some people times get confused, because they're one and the same. Percentages and RPE all go hand in hand. And what I kind of wanted to show is the chart I use. This isn't my chart by any means. This is actually, I've been using this forever. I used to be coached by the strength athlete and Hanny Jezarelli, and this is what they use. I forget who they got this from, but this is readily available online. If you go search, you can find the same chart in many places. But I personally have found this chart to be the most accurate one. I've used or looked at a lot of different ones, and every single time I come back to this as probably being the most accurate in the normalized aspect. Obviously, there's always going to be outliers, which actually could be a good topic for another video, and looking at who kind of has an outlier for when it comes to RP and rep ranges and percentages based on the norms. But looking at this, so we can see here, anytime we're programming with an RPE, that also is relative to a percentage. So if I want to program a set of 5 at a 7 RPE, that is 78.6%. They're all one and the same. I could say I want to program a set of 5 at 78.6%, and that means it's going to be at a 7 RPE. But at least when I am conceptualizing everything I do, no matter if like I said, if I'm programming RPE or if I'm programming percentage based, I conceptualize in the sense of what is the relative intensity I'm shooting for on this specific workout. So if I want the relative intensity to be somewhere around a 7 RPE, and I'm going to program percentage, I'm going to start at 5 at a 7 and be at 78.6%. Within that, there's other things we can take from this chart. So for instance, if you look at 3 reps, which if we just look at general percentages, this would be the general percentage. At 2 reps, we could do 95.5%, 3, 92.2, 4, 89.2, and so on and so forth. That would be that's what, if you were to program a 5 rep max, it would be 86.3. Within that, we can also notice, for the most part, if you look at this, 92.2 minus 89.2 is 3%. 89.2 minus 86.3 is like 2.9%. And then it starts to change a little bit. But for the most part, 1 rep is about equivalent to 3%. And I'm going to use that throughout this video because I use it as a broad generalization. Now if I'm programming, maybe I'm going to get a lot more specific. If I'm doing like here, set of 8 to 9, that's only about 2.6%, it looks like. I might get more specific, but at the same time, 3% is a pretty good idea, is to say 1 rep equates to 3%, or 1 RPE equates to 3%, or a half RPE equates to 1.5%. All of those can be great information to understand when it looks to programming, and what we're going to look later at when it comes to programming percentages, programming back-offs, programming fatigue drops, all these things that we can kind of account for what the expected differences are in rep ranges and what we're doing. The other thing to notate, and it's not, I'll include a link down in the description box. Actually, probably the single most popular article on my website that probably gets over 1,000 hits a month from Google is what's your percentages on variations compared to your normal 1RM. So things like pause squats, tempo squats, spoto press, pause deadlifts, any variation. That's going to have to change things to an extent too, especially for programming based off a percentage and not RPE, because we're going to have some general idea of what to program at if we're going to give a percentage and not just give an RPE to work towards. I will say I recommend, if I can, I try to program RPE for something that's a pretty different variation that's going to be hard to know exactly what to do. But I'm going to include the link in the description box down below to that article, and I have all of those listed of pretty much every variation I've ever used and what I've found to be about the average intensity of what people can do that at. And it's actually been pretty interesting. So the safety squat one, I probably made this article 3 years ago or so. There's actually been a study recently that found the exact same percentage. And I don't think while I'm not saying I knew exactly that was for sure. I mean, I think any powerlifting coach can say over time and experience, they can pretty much kind of guess these things just by seeing so many people do them. So make sure to click on that if you want to get more information when it comes to kind of what is your percentage of what you can do a certain variation compared to your normal 1RM. So first up, we're going to look at adjusting intensity within a day. So looking at just one training session and how we can take, in sense, the same prescribed sets and reps and make pretty dramatic changes to it to increase or decrease the overall average intensity, the fatigue it accumulates, the stimulus it produces, and I'm going to say this probably a lot throughout this video. There really is kind of infinite numbers of ways to do this, an infinite number of possibilities. I'm trying to just give some general examples to kind of spur thought process, spur creativity to understand kind of what you can do. But don't take any of this as like this is exactly what you're supposed to do. This is more of just ideas of how you can manipulate to be able to take one workout and create many different permutations of it. So looking at it, here's just the most basic aspect of it. So we have competition squat. In sense, we have a total of 5 sets of 5. Right here we have 1 set of 5, that's the top set, 4 sets of 5, that's a back off. I even put here that the top set is programmed at a 7 RPE or 78.6%. That kind of gives you an idea of kind of where that top set is. And then the back off sets are programmed at 10% down. And I'll actually show this here just so you can kind of see it. A great tool if you've ever used it, if you're not very experienced with Excel, easy way to be able to program this in is just do equal M round. So if you don't remember the exact formula I'm showing you right now, just remember the M round formula. If you look up that, all I have to do is basically insert in the cell above times 0.9, 90%, comma, rounded to the nearest 5, parentheses, and that's going to automatically calculate it for me versus just putting in negative 10% and having someone just have to calculate it themselves. Just helps it easier for the athlete. So this is the most basic. This is a fairly, I don't want to say easy, but that's a fairly regressed version of 5 sets of 5, just to have one top set and then 10% back off. But I just wanted to start at that, and we'll show how we can progress that. So I want to start at the basic of it, and the very base level, and then progress from there to show what we can do to, in a sense, make this one day incrementally harder through step-by-step process. So the first thing is through back off intensity. So I even started lower. We could start at a 12% drop. That would be a pretty sub-maximal set by dropping 12% off of something that's already just a 7 RPE. We could go 10%, we can go 8%, we can go 6%. That isn't anything special there, but it's just an idea. That right there is a way to progress intensity. Our overall average intensity is higher on this 4-step than it is as 1. So even though it seems very minor, that is every little thing we do when it comes to these changes is creating some slightly different stimulus and adaptation. So if an athlete continually does their primary day as 1 by 5 and then backs off 10%, if the next training block I do 1 by 5 and then 4 by 5 at 6%, that in a sense is a stronger stimulus than they're probably used to, and that is a slight increase, and we can continually manipulate these all the time to create these just very gradual step-by-step processes of intensity increases. And then I just showed here what's going to eventually lead to some of the next things is, okay, well, maybe we don't go to 4% because honestly that's so minor that I probably wouldn't do that. So maybe then we go to two top sets, but then 3 by 5 at 12%. And then you just repeat the same process. Then it's 2 by 5 and then 3 by 5 at 10. And it just continually goes on and on and on. And so remember that within the next examples, because I'm going to stop talking about how much I back off those back off sets. And now we're going to talk about how we can structure sets. So in the original example, we had 1 by 5 and 4 by 5. A progression of that is 2 by 5 and 3 by 5, 3 by 5, 2 by 5, 4 by 5, 1 by 5, and then just straight sets at 5 by 5. So that is a progression model as well. I would say more so that this is the very broad progression model, and everything else we're talking about can be inserted between 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, between 3 and 4, versus just immediately jumping to changing sets. We can do a lot of incremental changes in between that before going from 2 by 5 to 3 by 5 with top sets. For instance, we could have a middle back off set. So 1 by 5 and then 4 by 5, just like we showed above. Or the next progression, we have 1 by 5 and then we back off 5% for 1 by 5 and then we have 3 by 5 at 10%. Next progression, 1 by 5, 2 by 5, 2 by 5. Then we have 2 by 5, 1 by 5, 2 by 5, 2 by 5, 2 by 5, 1 by 5. You're gonna get annoyed probably by the by 5s over and over, but you get my point here in the sense that this is just here's a very gradual progression that I can insert in between 1 and 2, where I went through a 4-step process before I eventually got to 2 by 5 and 3 by 5. This can be, and the reason why this is so important is we want to have very long training careers. And we need to continually produce slow and steady adaptations. While it's really cool to get crazy strong, crazy fast by just going all out right from the get-go, it's going to increase our longevity of our career and the longevity of our progress if we can create these very incremental stimulus increases to get stronger from those before then trying to jump to more. If every single one of these steps can elicit another 1% strength gain, that's awesome, because it's going to just be these continual little slight strength gains, allowing us to stay healthy in the process, because our body is we're allowing our body to very slowly adapt to these changes. So just understanding that within this whole idea. Next thing we can look at is, we looked at back off sets here, but maybe we're going to do pyramid sets. So we have 1x5 at a 7 RPE and then 4x5, which is what we originally had. Another option, 1x5 at a 6 RPE, 1x5 at a 7, and then 3x5. We now have a pyramid up to that top set. We could do the next one. We do add another pyramid set before that. We have 1x5 at a 5 RPE, working all the way up to a 7 RPE, and then 2x5. Yep, that's right. We could do 1x5 at a 6, 2x5 at a 7, 1x5. So like I said, 1x5, 2x5, 1x5, 1x5, 3x5. So all, again, variations of how we can progress our sets and our set scheme within top sets and back off sets before immediately saying, okay, I can do 1x5. Let's immediately now do straight sets in 5x5, which is a significantly higher average intensity. What I really like to do, honestly, and what I probably do, I do this a lot for bench press. I do it occasionally for squat. I don't really do it as much for deadlift. I'm going to kind of talk about individual differences with lifts later on and kind of intensities, but most people probably understand that bench, you can usually handle higher volumes, higher intensities than squat, and then squat you can usually handle higher volumes and higher intensities than deadlifts. Fatigue drops are awesome, because for me as a coach, it kind of takes the guesswork out of how many top sets and back off sets and intensity adjustments we should do. So in this example, this person has 5 total sets, just like we already had. 5 total sets of 5 reps. Let me actually change that. Of 5 reps. So that makes a little more sense now. They could, in a sense, have 5 sets of 5 at a 405. But what I decided here is, okay, I programmed this first set at a 7 RPE. I am okay with them continuing to do more sets of 405 as long as it doesn't increase over an 8 RPE. So in the sense of a fatigue drop, what I can do here is that I can program 5 total sets. They will continue doing sets of 405 until they hit an 8 RPE. At that point, they're going to stop and they're going to drop down. So maybe they get 2 sets instead of just 1, because they were able to handle that. At 2 sets, they hit that 8 RPE, so they would then plug that in, and it's going to have them do 3 back off sets. This kind of takes the guesswork out of it. This allows the athlete to be able to adjust. I can, in sense, in my head, have an understanding of what the fatigue I want induced within the training session, because I can even change this. If I want to go to a 9 RPE, so that it's going from a 7 top set and they're allowed to keep doing it until they hit a 9, that's going to induce more stress and more fatigue than stopping at an 8, because I'm allowing them to accumulate more fatigue until that 9 RPE, which I'm gonna go back a little bit. I had something at the top there. I'm gonna explain more of what fatigue drop is and what fatiguing set to set truly means, so people understand. I think that's a big misconception that people, they say, oh, I fatigued. You can literally calculate how much you fatigued by tracking your RPEs. Like, to the percentage, you can say, I fatigued this much by tracking your RPEs. So we can adjust this fatigue drop however we want to, based off of the intended stress we want to have on that session. And it also kind of takes the guesswork out. Like, instead of me guessing that this athlete can handle 2 sets on this day, I can put this fatigue drop and it will just kind of take care of itself. And it can regulate week to week. If they come in one week and they're just kind of beat down, maybe they only get 1 set. Maybe the next week they come in and they feel really good and they get 3. Typically what I do is I will use something like this to get an idea of how many sets they can handle. And if it starts to become pretty consistent that they always get, let's say, 2 sets, then I'll just program from there. And then I'll start doing the step ladder progression like I've been showing. I use this a lot more on bench though, because I have a lot of athletes who can get straight sets on bench. But I want them to be able to drop if they need to. I don't want to force them to have to do straight sets if they're fatigued on a day. So I sometimes more so, it's not even to allow the ability to do more sets, it's the ability to allow them to not do straight sets. So I rarely, if ever, personally, program straight sets. I don't think I have anyone doing that, because I will just program a fatigue drop, because if they get too fatigued or if it's just not a good day, I'd rather them have the opportunity to drop down. So in my opinion, I probably don't see, unless under certain circumstances, I'm probably not programming straight sets, because I can utilize the fatigue drop model to the exact same thing, allow them to do 5 sets of 5. But if for some reason this day doesn't go well and they're getting much more fatigued than I meant for them to be, they can adjust accordingly. It's just another great way to be able to utilize RPE. So the last one here is rep change. So I was just using the example of 1x5 and 4x5. But let's say we did 1x3 and 4x5. Then we can do 2x3 and 3x5. Like, we don't always have to have the same reps for the entire workout. The reps can change based on the sets. I want a heavier top set of 3, which is going to be a higher intensity because it's a set of 3. Even if it's at 7 RPE, it's going to be about 6% more. And then we back off for more volume. But I can even adjust that within a workout. So I can do 2x3, 1x5, 2x5 with the 5% back off and the 10% back off. Well, maybe I do 1x3, 1x4, 3x5. So I kind of have a step ladder of reps going up. Maybe I do 1x3 at a 7, 1x4 at a 7. So it's literally the same relative intensity. It's just a different weight because we are increasing reps, then backing off to 3x5 at a 10%. We could do just like on the pyramid progression, we could do 1x5 at a 5, 1x4 at a 6, 1x3 at a 7. It doesn't have to be the same reps pyramiding up. And I could even, if I wanted to do 3 sets, top sets, I can make all of those 7 RPE, and it's just going to be changing weight based on the rep scheme. So like I said, these are examples, but there's literally infinite possibilities of how you could adjust these examples within it. Another way is I could do 1x5 for the top set, and then instead of even backing off the weight, the back off is the reps. They didn't do 1x4, which is in a sense a 3% drop before then going to 3x5 at a 10% drop. Another way to do it, 1x5, and then they have 2x3, same weight, but that's a 6% drop just because of the repetition change, and then 2x5 at 10%. So like I said, I could probably go on forever with different examples and permutations of how you could implement this, but the idea is that we can be very creative with how we structure sets on a daily basis to adjust intensity, our average intensity, the amount we're inducing stress, to create adaptations, rather than just doing the straight jumping sets. We can have all these other options of how we can be able to adjust sets on a daily basis to create a bunch of gaps in between these, so that here we don't just have the option of 4 steps to the highest progression. Instead, we can in a sense have 50 steps with 10 between each one for the progression model we're going to. So I mentioned before that we can actually calculate exactly how much we are fatiguing, so that we can put more thought and specifics into exactly why we chose this 10% back off. There should be meaning behind it versus just some arbitrary number. So these are very general guidelines. This is by no means something to say this is exactly what you should go by, but just from experience, this is kind of what I've seen, and kind of gives an idea of kind of what's happening as we do sets. So for instance, let's say we have a squat max of 400. After we do a set, if we fatigue, our squat max can no longer be 400. We fatigued by a certain percent. So I have a general guideline, very general, that each set incurs about 0.5 RPE. And like we saw on the chart before, we can see what an RPE or a percentage means when it comes to reps. 0.5 RPE is about 1.5%. So if I take 400, and I'll show you the calculation here, times 0.985, so a 1.5% drop, after that set that induced a certain amount of fatigue, that induced 1.5% fatigue, my new max is 394. I can no longer hit 400 because a set fatigued me. Now, like I said, these are very general guidelines because a set at a 9 RPE is much more fatiguing than a set at a 4 RPE. Like we can't compare those two. It's going to be different. So this is very general guidelines just to give a theoretical concept and how to conceptualize this in your mind when you're kind of thinking about how much should I back off? How should I be programming this? So to get even a little bit more specific, for bench press, I probably see it being about a 0.25 to a 0.5 RPE fatigue each set, or 0.75 to 1.5%. Benches just isn't as fatiguing, which is why people can do typically more top sets. Squat, 0.5 to 7.5 RPE, so 1.5 to 2.25%. And then deadlift, more fatiguing, about 0.5 to 1 RPE, shouldn't be a decimal there, or 1.5 to 3%. Again, these are just very general ranges, but gives you an idea that each time you do a set, it fatigued you X amount. And so we can account for that. So one, we can have this fatigue drop setting, which already takes that into account. I say I am only okay with you fatiguing 1 RPE. So if I program this at 7 RPE and the fatigue stop is an 8, I am allowing you to fatigue at 1 RPE or 3%. If I put this at 9, I am saying you can fatigue up to 6% or 2 RPE. Like I can actually just, I can let the athlete kind of dictate that by how the workout's going. And some workouts may be better, some workouts may be worse. If I'm programming percentage-based though, I can kind of account for that. And how I can account for that is taking this general model and concept and applying it. So if a squat in general fatigues you 0.5 RPE or 1.5%, every single one of these sets fatigues you about 1.5%. And so if I want the first set to be a 7 RPE, I can program it at it, but then that fatigues us 1.5%, and just taking all the calculations, I'm not gonna explain completely why, that gets us to the next set, supposedly going to be a 4 RPE. The set after that, a 4.5 RPE. The next set, 5, 5.5, 6, and eventually gets me back to a 6 RPE. And maybe I'd even call that a 7-ish range, because for any of you who have done back off sets, they always, a lot of times they tend to be harder than the top set because you just don't put the same into it. So typically these back offs are gonna almost feel harder because of that. But this is how we can see this fatigue accumulating at a 10% increase. This is a very general model, but as I'm coaching an athlete more and more, I'm gonna get to learn that. And that's where I'm gonna be able to individualize it to figure out, okay, this is how much we need to be backing off. This is what we need to be doing, because I see that they can handle X amount of sets before they fatigue a certain amount. And then as we do the back offs, if they're rating their RPEs, I can see to what extent they're fatiguing. And we can literally calculate the extent they fatigue through a workout. Because if we have dropped from a 7 RPE and we've dropped 1.5% each set, they have fatigued 9% throughout the workout. And this isn't going along with the weights there, but let's say if they had a 400-pound max and they fatigued 9%, they have dropped their max in cents by 36 pounds. That is the fatigue they've had. And then we could even see if we wanted to get, I personally don't track this, but if you really wanted to get really into depth with tracking data, you could then come back the next workout, let's say it's RPE based, see what number they hit and what it projects to, and then compare it to their normal 1RM and then the fatigue. So how much did they recover from? So maybe they come back and then the next workout, the secondary day, they're fatigued, and they can hit, based off of their projections, they project to 385. But then they come back around to the next primary day and they project out at 410. And then it's 390. And then 415. And then 395. Now it doesn't always work out that perfect, but you can see what I say here. If the primary day is continual, this is where we care about seeing those increases. This is where we see the fatigue usually. So, and we're gonna get to more of that on kind of the week-to-week basis when we're doing primary and secondary days, is understanding fatigue management. So, but this should kind of give you an idea of kind of like why this is not just an arbitrary number that you back off a certain percentage, but that should be chosen with a specific goal and mindset in mind, that we are going to continue fatigue throughout the workout, so I have a certain threshold I don't want to pass. So carrying over what I was just talking about with fatigue, and understanding that we have a certain induced fatigue from every session, we then look at programming intensity within a week. We may have, whether you are doing 2 squat days, 3 bench days, 1 deadlift day, whatever it may be. We're just gonna think of a general lift for a certain frequency. And for the most part, we're gonna look at 3 days a week, just so that we can see examples of what a tertiary day would be like for squat and bench press, but just giving examples of understanding that we have roles of each day. Our primary day is meant to be the day we are the strongest and we induce the most fatigue, and it should be, in a sense, the hardest workout. We are trying to then manipulate the rest of the training throughout the week to then help us come back around to the next primary day to then, in a sense, be peaked again. Now, does that peak mean we're the strongest we've ever been? No, it just means we are the strongest within our weekly structure on that primary day. We are trying to manage our fatigue to be able to make sure that we are recovered by that time. So if I use the instance of fatigue drops, if we incur a certain amount of fatigue, and let's say our squat max is 400, but every single time we come to the secondary day, it's in sense 385 based off of general projections, that's okay, because that secondary day is not meant to be as fatigue inducing. So maybe that primary day, like I kind of showed, took us from a 400 squat max to a 364 squat max by the end of the workout. By the secondary day, we were able to recover to 385 pounds. By the end of that day, it then allows us to drop to 364 again, so we don't induce it. So in the sense that the first workout induced, I think it was 9% fatigue. Maybe the second workout induces 5% fatigue, but now we have an extra day, so maybe there's only 2 days between those workouts, but now we have 3 days to then come back around to the primary day, which allows us to get all the way back that 9%, if not a slight uptick from that. So now maybe we're slightly stronger. So all of this plays into structuring our week so that we can manage our fatigue to come back and be the strongest on our primary day, and be able to utilize the other days to induce stress, have skill practice, have more volume, but still allow the ability to recover enough so that in our weekly structure, we can come back and peak each week on our primary day. So looking at that, here's just a simple structure of kind of how we can set up a squat day, or a 3-day-a-week squatting. Now, I will say, once we get to talking about adjusting within a block, a lot of this is gonna make a lot more sense, because this is not like some set in stone, this is how it should look. There's so many ways we can adjust this, but I wanna just give a general framework of applying kind of the things I've talked about and how it could kind of be put on paper. So if we look at our primary squat day, we have a top single, followed by 2x3 and 3x4. I tried to keep that kind of 5-set thing pretty standard so we can just use that as our general guide and template. The one thing I did forget to mention, but I did mention in part 1 of the series if you watched that, I don't count a top single as a set. So when I calculate volume, I usually am looking at total sets. I don't really count that single as a set. So when I was showing that structure earlier, I can easily throw a single on top of every single one of those. I don't account for it as volume. I do need to account for that for the overall fatigue being accumulated throughout the entire training block though. So I may need to adjust other things knowing I'm doing a very heavy single on that primary day now. But I have a single, 2x3, 3x4. If you're looking at this, that single's programmed at 7 RPE or 89.2%. And then that top set, just like we had before, is programmed at 7 RPE or 78.6%, has a 10% drop from there. Day 2 is our tertiary day. Very, very easy, low intensity day. Should induce very, very little fatigue. And this is where that model I said of fatigue drops that's why it's a very general model, not set in stone. Because while this day, maybe it's right, it induces 1.5% fatigue every single set. This day's easy. There's no way it doesn't. There's only 2 reps each set. It's at a 5 RPE and then an 8% drop. And it's a self-limiting variation. We have safety bar, should say bar there, just make that a little more clear. Safety bar tempo squats. So we have a double self-limiting variation. You can see I programmed 1 set of 2 at 330 at a 5 RPE, which is 81.1% just based off of percentages. But then I also accounted for 90% for being a safety bar and 87.5% for being a tempo. So many aspects there are gonna lower the overall fatigue that's gonna induce. So it's probably not inducing 1.5%. I don't want to give an exact number it's inducing, but it's inducing less, which is why it's that tertiary day and almost could be a recovery day. Do we truly recover from doing this? There's some debate there, and some research has shown that you possibly could, but most of that research is with really, really light weight, not squatting decently heavy weight still. What I think more is that this is kind of acting as some skill practice, and it's inducing so little fatigue that it really doesn't interrupt this day. If anything, the reason people might find it helps is because since this induces so little fatigue and doesn't disrupt recovery, but it allows skill practice, we feel more skilled when we get to this day 3 workout. I think that's more what happens. We aren't actually recovering, we just aren't disrupting recovery, but we allow skill practice to account for the increase more over what the little extra recovery would have meant, if that makes sense. So then we come back around, we have our secondary day, which is still somewhat heavy, 6 RPE, somewhat self-limiting at a pause squat, 92.5% for the pause squat. And then you can see here, instead of having the 2 top sets, we have a top set, we have a back off at 5%, and then 3 back offs at 10%. There's multiple things at play here of why this structure would most likely allow us to come back the next week, and maybe the next week, week 2, everything's upping a little. Maybe now this is going to 8 RPE. This is going to 6. This is going to 7. our goal is to be coming back around and performing optimally on this day right here. So we are trying to structure everything so we feel like recover. So let's look at this. One, this is our heaviest day. We have the most total sets and cents if you're also accounting for that single. We have the highest average intensity, not only absolute load, but also relative because our RPEs are higher this day. We also have more top sets. So we're doing more sets at our heaviest weight. Whereas obviously on this tertiary day, that's very easy. It's low RPE and we're only doing one top set, but we're not backing off as much because there's not much to back off of a 5 RPE already. And then on our secondary day, this is, even though this is higher volume with the sets of 5 and 6, it's a lower RPE, and then we're only doing one top set. We're not inducing as much, in a sense, strenuous top sets. We're only doing one, backing off by 5% and then backing off by 10% to hopefully allow us to recover for this primary day. Let's say we're going through this though, and this is the athlete, and we keep finding that they're not coming back on that primary day. They're not feeling as ready for it. There's many things we could possibly do within the structure. We could adjust intensity. I could maybe have a lower RPE on these days, which is something we're going to look at a little bit more when it looks at the entirety of the block and how we kind of structure that. So that I adjusted those without much reasoning there, but just an example, I could lower that. Maybe I keep those the same, but I take away a set there. So I drop volume on that day knowing I want this day to be more fatiguing. Maybe they can't come back around and fully recover with this volume load and this intensity and then come back around and be peaked on their primary day. So we're always trying to structure things of trying to figure out how can we have, for the most part, good training days, but we know we're going to be carrying some fatigue around here, especially here, this tertiary day, knowing that this is going to be after that primary day. We know we're going to carry high fatigue into this workout, but since it's a low RPE and easy workout, we're going to not really have much issue with it. Here, we're going to have some fatigue going into it, but we know that we're programming possibly less volume, possibly lower absolute intensity, so that hopefully we come back around and we can then peak again for this next day. So everything is structuring to be able to do that. And then as we continue to progress, we're consistently trying to implement what we've talked about with these just very, very, very slow changes. So maybe eventually what this workout looks like way down the road is maybe I realize, okay, this is a good structure. I can do this right here, and that allows me to recover and get stronger and continually peak for this primary day, and I'm continually progressing block to block. Eventually, that plateaus though. We're inducing the same stimulus over and over. We're not changing anything. We need to change something. So possibly what we do then is we have this. And now we're going to change that primary day. Okay, let's add a little bit more stress. So instead of doing 3 back off sets, I just now put an in-between set. All right, so I'll just put a random number here. I think that's about what it'll be. I now increase the overall intensity of this workout, average intensity, by taking away one of the most back off sets, put in a middle set. So now I have a 5% back off and the higher average intensity. That's just an example, but that's how we can make these very slight changes block to block and over the long term to continually progress the program to be producing a stronger stimulus to continue to produce adaptations through progressive overload. So just to give some examples, just so you can kind of see it, I tend to use squat, probably because it's my favorite lift. I tend to use squat in a lot of my examples, but in a weekly structure, I definitely program squat, bench, and deadlift different. This is just me. There are people different, but I currently have 0 athletes who I would say do a tertiary day that is strenuous. It's usually very low rep in what you call a power day in the sense of the DUP format, where it's just low reps, low RPE, and it's a skill practice day. But I don't find that elicits as much of a strength response. We are pushing high volume, so we're not getting a volume response. What I really see is that some people, one, are doing so much volume on the other days that we just need to find a way to take some of that back off volume and put it on another day. And so this is almost like taking the back off volume from other days and putting it on this tertiary day. Because I could just delete this all together and add a set here, add 2 sets here, and we do the same total sets, let's say. The same total sets, but those days are very hard. They're going to induce a lot of fatigue, and we might not be able to recover from them. So spreading that volume out a little bit is going to be more optimal in being able to recover, as well as being able to have that middle day for skill practice. So that's just me though. There are plenty of coaches out there who have a third squat day that is a little bit more strenuous. That's just me. Bench, for sure, I would say the vast majority of people I coach have 3 bench days, and they are 3 legitimate bench days. But within that, they're going to be different as well. So again, here's a similar structure. We have a top single, 2x3, 3x4, 7 RPE, all the same there. Not saying I'm programming bench the same, just here's the idea of it. For our tertiary day, we have a higher RPE, well, at 6 instead of at a 5, because bench, my assumption is we are going to be able to handle higher intensities more often. We're not going to fatigue as much. So instead of having to do a super low RPE, we can do a pretty high volume workout here, sets of 6 and 7 at a 6 RPE, and then come back around to our final day at a 6.5 RPE. So you can see the biggest thing here, if I'm talking about individual differences between lifts, is that probably this primary, secondary, and tertiary day are going to be closer in the grand scheme of things of what kind of stress they're inducing. Whereas we see a lot more of a difference here on the squat. It's a lot closer kind of what these days do. And I actually have instances where I have someone doing 2 primary days, where both primary days are programmed at the exact same amount of general fatigue induced, and we more have a tertiary day in the middle that's a little bit lower intensity and less volume. But just the general idea of kind of how bench probably can be able to handle a higher average intensity. We're not going to fatigue as much between sets from a workout, and we're going to be able to come back to workouts and be able to do a little bit more of a higher average workload throughout. And then deadlift being the last one, just to give an example, I use 2 days on deadlift because I personally don't have anyone deadlifting 3 days a week, and I honestly don't ever see, I don't want to say ever, but I don't ever see it. I've yet to see anyone I know or have coached needing a 3rd deadlift day. So if we're doing 2 deadlift days, we have our primary day and our secondary day. Deadlift is, there could be arguments of why this is, but most people would agree it tends to be the most fatiguing lift. It's probably partially because we're usually lifting the most with it. Because of that, it induces more fatigue, and we tend to not be able to train it in the same manner we train squat, and definitely not in the same manner we train bench. So we can see here, again, same structure, but I had to change a little bit. We have a top single, and then instead of doing 2 top sets, I did a top set, a middle back off, and then a final back off. And they're actually a little bit more, 6% and then 12%. And we can see some rep changes. So I put, it says times 3% there, mainly because it's because of the one rep difference there. So it's really just in the sense of like RPE wise, it's 12% backed off. Excuse me. And then we have our secondary day, a big RPE drop down to 5. So instead of like squat, we had, just example, 7, 6, 5. Here we have 7, 5. So this day is really to allow skill practice and a little bit of volume, but really to give plenty of ability to recover so we can come back around and feel fresh for this primary day. In this instance, I used the pause deadlift. We did a top set of 5 and then kept the same weight. And here's another way we can be able to change intensity without even changing weight, is instead of doing another set of 5, I did 5 sets of 1 with a 45-second rest in between. In sense, because that is a 4 rep difference, that's about a 12% drop, even though the weight stays the same. But 4 reps difference is about a 12% drop. I put 8 to 12 though, because of the 45-second rest, it's going to make it a little bit different. It's not like I'm having them rest 3 minutes between sets. So it's probably more of like an 8% drop in the conceptual realm of things. But just another way I can be able to do that. And this is going more to deadlift, is something that I like to do a lot of skill practice on. So allowing more singles kind of helps with that. But hopefully this kind of gave some conceptual idea of kind of how you do this. So the last thing to kind of understand with all this, and you've kind of seen it throughout this, is that not only are we adjusting average intensities and volume and top sets versus back off sets and all that thing within the weekly cycle to be able to manage fatigue to make that primary day our strongest, we can also do that through the self-limiting variations. I personally am a big fan of using self-limiting variations for a couple reasons. One, because it typically allows us to train at higher relative intensities more often, because we don't have to use as high of an absolute load, and that tends to just keep people healthier. If we can do things like pause squats and tempo squats and safety bar versus just comp squatting year round, it tends to allow us to still train at higher relative intensities, but we don't get beat up near as much. As well as, if I plan this to be a comp squat day versus a pause squat day, this day now induces more fatigue. It doesn't mean there aren't days like I very well could do 3 days of comp squatting. I'm not saying I don't. What I am saying is I would need to factor that in. If I am doing 3 days of comp squatting, this structure no longer probably will work, because these days now induce a lot more fatigue because the absolute load goes up because it's no longer self-limiting. But I can also use that to my advantage. If I want to make sure that I push my comp squat day but I want to make sure they get adequate volume, and want to be able to push higher relative intensities, I can then self-limit that fatigue induced by doing these variations so they don't have to fatigue as much by still doing sets at 6 to 7 RPE or doing more top sets or things like that. So the variations we choose very much also play into the fatigue induced and the fatigue model to be able to control this throughout a weekly cycle. Lastly, let's look at how we can adjust intensity and manipulate it in the aspect of an entirety of a training block. So just for the ease of example, we're looking at 4 weeks for all of these. But if you looked at or watched my part 1 of this series with volume, you'll see kind of how I would determine the length of a training block. But we're just going to use 4 weeks as just kind of the general basis for this. So as I mentioned before, and I'm going to say it again, there is an infinite number of ways to do this. I probably could have spent hours upon hours upon hours giving examples, but the more examples don't make this more clear. I more just want to give, again, the creative thought process that goes into us of how we can consistently manipulate things to come back to that weekly structure to make sure that we are not only peaking in the sense on our primary days, but peaking at the right time at the end of our training blocks. So I will kind of allude to what I talked to in part 1 is we're trying to find in a certain block structure. And if, let's say, we're doing 4 weeks and then deload per se on the 5th week, but 4 weeks on, that 4th week on our primary day is planned to probably, most likely, I can't think of too many instances where I don't do that, is going to be our heaviest and most intense day. We're trying to not only peak each primary day on weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we're trying to peak week 4 primary day as well to be even better than the 3 prior weeks. So within that, we have so many ways we can, in a sense, structure things. And as I mentioned, I conceptualize things in the sense of RPE. I could easily put percentages here, but I'm going RPE, not saying that you program this RPE every single time, but this is the general conception of kind of the relative intensity you're programming at in this kind of structure of progression week to week. So just a general thought process with this as well. I would say for the most part, in the stereotypical model of what I do, I probably program most top sets in like the 6 to RPE range. Do I go lower? Yes. Do I go higher? Yes. But I'm thinking more so that the vast majority of our work is within those ranges. And probably that back off work after we've backed off and whatever fatigue drop we do, anything like that, probably are more in the 4 to 6 rep range. Could it be lower? Yes. Could it be higher? Yes. But that's kind of where probably the bulk of the work is. So that's also where I'm using that to kind of show things of, okay, here's the structure within that thought process. So, all right. So let's just look at a very typical model that I would say if this is one that barring someone has some distinct reason why, I would possibly start with. Depending on the lift, because it's also lift dependent as well. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. But general model, we have a 4-week block. We have day 1, and that's going to be the primary day. So every single time I'm talking about day 1, that's the primary day. And then day 2 is the secondary day. And I didn't do a tertiary day just for ease of most of this. But we ramp up from a 6.5 to a 7 to a 7.5 to an 8 RPE by week 4. On our secondary day, it's 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. So it's always a half RPE less. That's just, again, general model. How can we change that? So let's regress day 2. So we want to peak this primary day, and we want this 8 RPE day or primary day on week 4 to be our strongest day. But if this is inducing too much fatigue to recover, how do we change that? Well, maybe we do a bigger step drop. Maybe we are now doing 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5. So instead of a half RPE jump each week, it's a full RPE jump. Maybe we're ending at a lower RPE and starting at a lower RPE. So 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7. Or maybe we do, if this is the extreme model of it, I don't use this very often, but again, just examples, is maybe we do a 1.5 jump, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5. So a very large step jump each week. Or maybe we regress both days. Maybe we do 8, 7, 6, 5, 7.5, 6.5, 5.5, 4.5. So all different ways we can change that relative intensity within the same model. So I showed how we could possibly decide what we're doing on a daily basis. I showed how we decide on a weekly basis. So we need to kind of understand that it goes in this order typically. We're needing to understand daily, weekly, and block structure, and they build upon each other. Everything is progressing in kind of that manner. So if I progress daily, that's also going to change the weekly structure. And then once I change the weekly structure, I might change the block structure. I typically probably wouldn't go back the other way. It's going to be daily, weekly, block as the progression model for the most part I'm using based on where we're at in our training. So this is a general block structure. I can adjust this based. I can take the same exact layout, the same exact microcycle layout and macrocycle and meso-cycle layout for this, and just adjust these things and progress them. So if this is where I started, this is the progression and whatnot, and which actually is what I'm showing next. So maybe we're gonna progress that primary day now. In reality, like if this is where we're starting on our primary day, where we're doing a RPE step each time, this is a progression. So there's so many infinite possibilities of how we do this a progression. It's just understanding that this is a form of progression. So you can almost look at it, okay, we on the daily structure, maybe we added a top set. We ran with that for a while. That induced some progress. Now, instead of doing anything daily, now we look at weekly, and maybe on weekly, we change some kind of the structure. And then we say, okay, we've changed that. We've changed our daily. We ran that for a block or two. We changed our weekly. We ran that for a block or two. Now we're going to change our block structure, and we're going to run that to be able to then create some stimulus before we even then come back around and change the structure of the daily. And I mentioned, like, that's why there's so many steps that we can take before just saying, let's add one more top set. We can literally adjust every aspect of every part of the program before then coming back around and adjusting that top set to need more progression. So again, let's start with this general model. A progression of that is maybe we're going to change so maybe we're doing, instead of 6.57, 7.58, we want to work at a higher average intensity and relative intensity throughout the block. So we're working at a 7, 7, 8, and 8. I typically, just because athletes, I just find this, and I'm going to show a structure down here of kind of what I don't typically do. I find that athletes tend to like some form of change each week. They don't like to be told to do the same weight. They don't like to be told to do the same RPE. They like having something new. Is that optimal all the time? No. Do I always change it week to week? No. But I find most people get more motivated by seeing just something slightly different week to week so that they don't look at repeating the same thing as some kind of negative. So this is what I would do in that instance. Instead of doing 1x3 at a 7, or whatever it may be, 1x4 to 7, 1x4 to 7, 1x4 and 8, 1x4 and 8, we'll just do some rep scheme changes. And it's very light. I mean, 4 to a 3 is nothing. You'll do a 1x4 to 7, 1x3 to 7. That the assumption is you should be able to use more weight on the 1x3. And then we'll come back around, 1x4 and an 8. Maybe the goal is use the 1x3 weight at 1x4 because it's the same thing. 1 RPE is 1 rep, and you just increase by 1 rep and increase by 1 RPE. So the thought process is you should probably be able to repeat week 2 weight with week 3, and then you're going to bump it up again because we're dropping a rep again. So just a possible model of how we can work at higher RPEs throughout the training block while not, in a sense, doing the same thing. Another model here, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5. And that could, I mean, we could do this with the same rep scheme because we are changing the RPE, but it's even a model within that we're changing the reps within it. Because again, I just want to give a lot of different ideas that it doesn't have to be this strict model. There's so many different ways we can do this. And then last one here, 7.5, 8, 8, 8.5. And in every single one of these, we're just leaving that day 2 the same. I'm just using this, maybe this is the model we're using right here, but I mean, it doesn't matter what that is. We're just leaving this the same. We're leaving that day 2 the same, and there's constant manipulation here to that primary day. Because probably for the most part, and what I'm gonna say is that I'm gonna try not to manipulate both these days at the same time. I'm trying to manipulate one little factor at a time, because going back to part one, the more we manipulate and change, the harder it is to understand what's going on. We're trying to find predictability, we're trying to find repeatable processes, and we're trying to figure out what works. And the more we change and the more we do that's different, the harder it is to understand what is going on and what's working. So I'm going to try for the most part to make these gradual changes. We're going to change on a day-to-day basis. We're going to change the week one, and then we're going to change maybe on a block basis, but we're only changing that primary day, or we're only changing that secondary day. We're not doing large-scale changes for the most part. I'm not saying all the time. There's plenty of instances where I do, but for the most part, we're trying to make these very slight changes to elicit some new adaptation or progression. So, another example is more of a static model. This is probably what I don't use as often for many reasons. I think one, that the static model tends to induce too much fatigue from the get-go. Just in my opinion, I'd rather build up and then since peak for that week 4. But just an example here is we have 1x4 and 8, 1x4 and 8, 1x4 and 8, 1x4 and 8. Could that work? 100%. If it's structured properly, you should be able to do more weight at an 8 RPE each week. I just find a lot of athletes struggle with that kind of model. Like I said, athletes like to see something different each week. It's just, that's not even an athlete, that's just human beings in general. We don't like monotony. We like something, some trivial thing that inspires some motivation that we should be doing more this week. And so I try to do something that gives them a slight uptick of, okay, you're doing more this week versus this is the same thing and whatnot. So, and then we can see here, we just have some structure of this building. I did this 4, 5, 6, 7, this bigger step approach, mainly because if you're doing 8 RPE every single week, you're gonna have to adjust this based off of this model. We could do that same structure, but manipulating, maybe we're gonna do a little bit more change. We are gonna have 8 RPE every week, but we're gonna do 1x4, 1x3, 1x4, 1x3. It could even be 5, 5, 4, 4. Maybe you're doing 2. I forget the name of this. I forget. Trevor Jaffe likes this model of the step approach, where you start with maybe 2 weeks of the same reps, then you drop reps 2 weeks, and so on and so forth. Or we could do 5, 4, 3, 2. Again, so many models of what you could possibly do within this. And this goes back to all the other ones we've shown too. And then the last one, this is a very much kind of like an emergent strategies approach. Here's just the same set rep RPE scheme every single day, every single week until you hit, in sense, a peak. So another one, I don't utilize this often, but I definitely have this, is the reverse model. So we have our general model, and then we have the reverse model. So we have the step ladder going up to an 8 RPE, and then we have a reverse ladder going down. So we have 6, 7, 6, 5, 4. I have one person in particular I use this with because he gets very, very fatigued once it gets heavy. So I try to really offset when it gets heavy later in a block with the secondary day. If we do ascending steps on both days with him, he tends to get really beat up from that. So we do opposite, essentially. We do the reverse order on the secondary day, and he tends to recover much better. And then just another example of it. If you're going up, if you're 6, 7, 7.5, 8, maybe instead of the 1 set drop, you're doing a half set drop each time. Typically, if I do this, it's for someone who most of the time they're probably doing fairly low volume. They fatigue fairly easy from really, really heavy sets. And I'm usually not starting this week 1 very heavy. So that's why I didn't even program the 7.5 starting here. It's usually starting this week 1 pretty light and dropping from there. So we can get this big distinction in the days, because the fatigue debt from a 7.5 or an 8 set to them is noticeably higher than the fatigue debt from a 6.5 to a 7. Because like I said, I have the general idea of, oh, a set induces 1.5% fatigue, but that is not always true. That is just a very general starting point to go from. And in the athlete I'm talking about, there's a very big difference in getting up to this like 7 to 8 RPE range than him being in the 5 to 6. We see a vast difference, so we need more recovery on those secondary days to account for that. So last one here, just kind of give an idea of it, since we've mainly been doing 2 days, is a general model of having a tertiary day. So this would probably be something that this would look like something I'd have on bench press. This general model here, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8. Day 2 is the secondary day, even though it's in the middle, it's a secondary day. 6, 6.57, 7.5, and the tertiary day 5.56, 6.57. So it's just this gradual approach on each, but we also have the step regression on each from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 when it comes to the general relative intensity. From there, we can adjust a lot of things. So maybe the first 2 days are the same, but we're going to do a larger step progression on day 3. Maybe day 1's the same, but we're going to do a larger step progression on day 2. And then we're gonna just be generally light on day 3. This might look more like something on a squat that I might do, is that I'm gonna have a heavy primary day, a bigger step progression on that secondary day, and then very light tertiary day. Here's a very kind of extreme example of it, 6, 5, 4, 3, where that day would be, that would be something be more rare, but just another example of it. And then again, here's another example of just kind of some step progression. So. Like I said, there is legitimately numerous ways you can do this. And like I said, it also goes back to the differences in 3 lifts. We've already kind of alluded to it, is if bench press is the least fatiguing, squats in the middle, and deadlift is the most, we're probably gonna have different block structure models for intensity for each of those. Like, they're not all gonna look the same. We're not gonna apply the same ones to every single one. We're gonna have to adjust based on each lift and how each individual athlete fatigues on that lift, because it can be very different. We have to make sure to also account for each lift and find this fatigue model for each one. And one issue too is that squat and deadlift sometimes goes hand in hand, especially squat and sumo deadlift. Those two tend to carry a lot of the same fatigue because a sumo deadlift is decently similar to a squat in what it does. Whereas I see conventional and squat not having as much shared fatigue, but it has it. So bench is kind of on its own, but I mean, even a whole separate topic that we can go into great detail is kind of how squat and deadlift, you have to structure those against each other to be able to figure out how both can be able to peak in some manner, or if you're even wanting to peak both. A lot of my more advanced level lifters, we're not trying to be strong at both except for on meet day. For most of the time, we're trying to have some type of emphasis on one or the other, which I would say majority of the time that's more on squat, because squat tends to do a decent job of increasing and pushing your deadlift. Deadlift doesn't do that for squat. So if I'm going to choose one or the other, the majority of the year we're going to prioritize probably squat if that's needed, and then maybe have intermittent blocks where we are prioritizing deadlift. And because we know we're prioritizing that and that fatigue is going to carry over, we have to adjust the model we're using for intensity adjustments for squat as well. As mentioned, I wanted to be able to dive into accessories as well, because I think that is a very overlooked and ignored aspect of programming, is that there's just not very much thought process put into it. So within that, the one thing I want to kind of lead with is that as we're looking through this, while I might put in some type of, there's a lot of variations I might do to be able to kind of program accessories, I do for the most part tend to keep the relative intensity the same throughout each week. Sometimes I might do like a step ladder, like you saw with the 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, like you might see like on a main movement. For the most part on accessories, I'm keeping them fairly similar. And the reason being is typically we're rotating accessories. And when we put a new accessory in, there is this immediate strength progression with it. So we don't even need to worry necessarily about the step progression with relative intensity to increase the weight. The weight's gonna increase each week just off of using the same RPE, because we're gonna get better at it because we haven't done it as much. I'm not gonna say this is set in stone, but maybe every 2 blocks you're rotating accessories in some manner. You're not leaving in just a dumbbell bench press every single training block. So when you come back to it, you tend to not need the same step progression. You just need to, I tend to just to program it at a set RPE each week, and then the progression of basically getting back into that movement tends to take care of that on its own. So within that though, we can do a lot of things to be able to structure accessories to, 1, manage fatigue, because they are part of fatigue as well. And 2, to be able, maybe even more important, maybe to be able to motivate and encourage athletes to take them serious and to push them. That's a big issue within powerlifting, is sandbagging accessories. There's dozens and dozens and hundreds of memes online about powerlifters sandbagging their accessories. So part of it is because if you just give them the most boring thing of 4 sets of 8 at 8 RPE, row of choice, how much does that say as the coach, or even if you're programming for yourself as an athlete, how much is that saying that you really care about that versus putting some more thought process into, okay, this is an actual exercise I want you to get good at. So let's take a look at that. And I just have a bunch of examples here. Don't have to say that this is the exercise you do it with, just a bunch of different examples of how you can structure it. So weighted dips, look at that first. So we have a top set of 4, so they can push the intensity of that. They insert in that weight, and then just for your own learning purposes, if you ever do something like this with a weighted dip or a weighted pull-up, make sure to use the weight you used plus your body weight. If you don't, it comes out, it doesn't calculate right. So let's say a 200-pound person used 50 pounds, we insert in 250, and it then gives them the back off work. Top set and a back off just like we normally would. And we could literally go through the entire model we just did with weighted dips too. Maybe the next block, we have 2 top sets and 2 back offs. Literally, I mean, this is literally infinite of how we can continually apply this thought process with adjustments and intensity. So, but here, I'm telling this athlete, I want a top set. They hopefully will probably put more into that top set since they have this set to shoot for, and then that's gonna regulate what they do in sense for the back off work. Similar thing here, reverse lunges. 1 set of 7 and an 8 RPE, and then they have the option to drop about 10 to 15 pounds each hand for the back off sets. Here, incline dumbbell bench press, 3 sets of 10 at like a 7 to 8 RPE, and then they have a 4th set where they drop 10 pounds each hand from those working sets, and they AMRAP to a 9 RPE. So just a way to be able to encourage some type of intensification by doing an AMRAP with the incline dumbbell bench press. Here is a model I like. It's kind of confusing, but hopefully I can explain it. Dumbbell bench press, 4 sets of 12. But in reality, they only have 1 set of 12. They're gonna do a set of 12 at an 8 RPE, just like they would on some other examples here. They're gonna rest, just normal rest, 2 to 3 minutes. Then they're gonna add 5 pounds each side from set 1 and do as many reps as they can to an 8 RPE. So what that means, let's say they use 80 pounds on set 1 for 12 reps at an 8. On set 2, they're going to use 85 pounds, and there's no set repetition scheme because they're using more weight now, and I want them to still be at an 8 RPE. So maybe now with 85 pounds, they get 11 reps at an 8 RPE. And then they're going to rest again. Yep, this is not showing it. I'll show it here. They're going to rest again, add another 5 pounds. So on the 3rd set, they're going to 90 pounds, going to an 8 RPE. Maybe now they get 9 reps. And then they're gonna do that one more time. For a 4th set, they're gonna add another 5 pounds. So now they're at 95 pounds, and maybe they get 8 reps at an 8 RPE. So it's literally a pyramid model to tell them that they're gonna go 80, 85, 90, 95. And what I find with that is I can't tell you how many athletes I've seen that get 12 reps on every set, and then it tells them, oh, I probably didn't go heavy enough on that 1st set. If that was truly an 8 RPE on that 1st set, there is no way by that 4th set at 15 pounds heavier, I can still get 12. So I love that model to kind of force athletes to learn that. So here's just another example, single arm dumbbell row. And since 10 total reps each side, but what they're gonna do is 5 on one side, 5 on the other, 5 on one side, 5 on the other. It's kind of like if you're done alternating dumbbell curls, you can use more weight than if you curl both at the same time because each arm's getting a break. So you start with one arm, you do 5 reps, then immediately do 5 reps with the other, then 5 reps and then 5 reps. So in sense, you can use more weight for the 10 total reps than if you just did 10 total. Here's a body weight exercise and kind of how I do it. Because if you're doing, well, actually I included weight vest there, but let's just say body weight instead. Body weight, we can't increase the weight because it's our body. So it's hard to say do X amount of reps. So instead you say do 4 sets to an 8 RPE each set. So the reps could change every single set. You're just saying to stop at an 8 RPE. So maybe the first set that's 13, then the next set it's 12, then it's 12, then it's 10. You could change every set, you're just stopping at an 8 RPE. Here is just the very basic version. I'm not saying I don't use it, I use it all the time. I'm just saying I like to be creative in other ways to give athletes something to do on accessories that isn't just the simple 4 sets of 8 at an 8 RPE. That's a very common model. It works. If an athlete can be motivated on their own, that can be a great thing to do. That is a fine way to put it. But I have all these other models of how I can adjust intensity and sets and reps and all that kind of stuff to be able to increase adherence when it comes to accessory work, and also have adjustments I can make when it comes to the stimulus produced and also the fatigue aspect. So some other ones here. We've got lying hamstring curl rest pause. If you a bodybuilder back in the day and did Dorian Yates or HIIT style training, you're very familiar with rest pause. So how this is this in myo reps is similar but not similar. So in the sense of rest pause and how I programmed this, they would do 12 reps to an 8 to 9 RPE, rest 30 seconds, then AMRAP with that same weight to an 8 to 9 RPE, rest 30 seconds, and then repeat one more time. So basically they're doing 3 sets back to back to back with 30 seconds rest in between with the same weight. Dumbbell lateral, side lateral myo reps. So myo reps is a little bit different. 15 to 20 reps at a 9 RPE, rest 15 seconds, AMRAP to a 9, rest 15 seconds. And since you're doing 4 total sets with 15 seconds rest in between. So typically this is less reps on those later sets, where the rest pause, you tend to get more reps on those later sets due to more rest. Here's a drop set approach. 2 sets of 12 at an 8 to 9 RPE, and you're gonna take that same weight, do 12 reps just like you already were doing, but then you're gonna rest 15 to 20 seconds, drop 5 pounds each hand, and AMRAP to a 9. So you're just doing a drop set, something bodybuilders do all the time. As powerlifters, we don't tend to do it very much, but on a dumbbell side lateral, we can do that. That's not gonna affect fatigue very much. Am I gonna do this with a leg press or incline barbell bench press? Probably not, but with the dumbbell side lateral, that can be a great way to kind of motivate the athlete to actually kind of like take it serious versus just getting through 3 sets and not really caring. And the last one here, obviously we could do BFR style training. If you're not familiar with BFR, I looked that up. So I'm not gonna go through all that, but this is all just kind of give you a general mindset or general framework of kind of how you can be a little bit more creative with accessory work to be able to increase adherence, increase the ability to progressively overload it, and get more out of it. So lastly, I'm just gonna kind of break down a couple examples of athletes I have just to kind of see this put into practice. I gave a lot of different ideas of what we can do, but now let's kind of see how we can creatively apply this. So first off, let's look at Matt. I took away most of the program so that we can just look at how he structured his 3 squat days, because this block in particular had a lot of interesting things with kind of how we did everything. So we have his primary day on Tuesday, competition tempo squat. Thursday we have competition long pause squat, and then Saturday safety bar tempo squat. If you can't tell, we were really hammering tempos this block. So what we can see here is I'm going to go through each day. So on his primary day, he has a top single, and you'll see each week he has back offs at 3s, but on week 1 he has doubles for his top set, triples on week 2, doubles on week 3, triples on week 4, doubles on week 5. But there's even more to it than that. So we also see there's a progression with top sets. We have 1 set of 2 on week 1 and then 5 by 3. Week 2 is 2 by 3 and then 4 by 3. And then starting week 3 on, he has fatigue drop. So in reality, he could possibly do 6 total sets on that 560 as long as it doesn't hit a 7.5 RP. So you can see here, he got 5 sets. On week 4, he got 3 sets before 550 hit an 8. And then on week 5, he got 595 for 3 sets of 2 before it hit an 8.5. So we did multiple things within this block. It wasn't just like we just kept it stagnant. There was multiple adjustments where we tapered this up until week 3, and then we started doing the fatigue drop so that he could have more top sets, which is then going to probably accumulate more fatigue, but it's also going to hopefully produce more adaptations. Within that too, the reason I did the adjustments of rep schemes on weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 between the doubles and the triples is because if we're looking here, it's not just a simple progression ladder. It's not just like we're going 6, 7, 8, or 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8. It's not just 5 weeks of a simple progression. This week, he has doubles programmed at 89.2%, which in RPE wise is an 8 RPE. Then he has triples programmed at 85%, which is a 7.5 RPE. He has doubles programmed at 87.8. That's a 7.5 RPE. And then we'll keep going 7, 7. So 7, 7, 7.5, 7.5, 8. So I wanted him working at higher intensities more often on this primary day because he can't. He can handle crazy amounts of work and stress on squats, and I can't even make him struggle. So he can handle that. So that was the point of it, but I didn't want it to be at first. I had this gradual progression even within the block to working to these more fatiguing workouts on weeks 3, 4, and 5 to really peak on this week 5 workout, which this block he did 100%. Best workout of the entire week was week 5 on that primary day. So in between his primary and secondary day is that Thursday tertiary day, is competition long pause squat. This looks a little bit more static, or just looks more linear and simple. It's 2 by 2 and 3 by 2. It doesn't change any week. He starts out at this day 85. I think that was programmed at a 6.5 RPE. And then every single week it just drops by a half RPE. So it goes 6.5, 6, 5.5, 5, 4.5. Fairly simple, just progression down or progression up from week 1 to week 5 there, for kind of in senses as skill practice and just a day to accumulate a little bit more workload, but be able to not induce so much fatigue that he can't come back for Saturday and be strong. For Saturday, just for the ease of it, I deleted what he did and I just put in the RPEs he was programmed to do. So you can see we had 7.5 RPE, 7, 6.5, 6, and then 6. So obviously that is much lighter in the grand scheme of things compared to his primary day, as well as we had one top set of 3. We then had a 5% back off set for a triple, and then we had another 5% back off plus the 3% because it's 1 rep difference for this. So this was obviously not only was lighter because the RPE and the relative intensity is lower, but the average intensity is lower too because I'm only having him do 1 true top set. I'm having to do a middle set at a 5% back off, and then the majority of his back off work was pretty easy. Whereas if we're going to that primary day, like I said, after weeks 1 and 2, he averaged about 4 sets, 3 to 4 sets on his top set. So that's inducing a lot more work than it is, even though it's the same amount of sets, it's inducing a lot more fatigue most likely than a secondary day. As well as, oh, I actually did. So I had him backing off more here. You can see that. Let's see, I forget what I did here. So throughout the entire time on the primary day, I did have that back off at 12%, mainly because if he was hitting 5 sets here, I wanted those back offs to be pretty easy. I wanted the prioritization of let's try and really push on these top sets, and then once we back off, we'll kind of recover from that and not keep just pounding him with high intensity. So that's just kind of a general idea of, like I said, here is being a little bit more creative within all of this of how we can have this primary, secondary, and tertiary day all work together throughout an entire training block to manage daily fatigue, manage weekly fatigue, and then manage the entirety of the block's fatigue. So next example we'll look at is Zach. Reason we'll look at Zach, I literally just wrote this program, and it's a good example of showing the differences in all 3 lifts because he has very different fatiguing factors when it comes to all 3 lifts. So let's look at bench first off. So bench, primary day, he has competition bench press, and he has fatigue drop sets. So he will do as many sets as he can until he hits this fatigue stop. It's programmed, I believe, up to an 8 RPE on week 4, and it's just like a step progression each week up to that. On a secondary day, competition bench press with fatigue drop as well. So if he can get 5 sets on both these days, awesome, go for it. And I believe this goes up to a 7.5. It's just kind of a step progression going up to it. And then on his tertiary day, we have Larsen close grip bench. So we have a double thing here. We have a self-limiting variation, a double self-limiting variation. We have Larsen and we have close grip. So that's double self-limiting. As well as you can see here, we're not using fatigue drop. We just have 1 top set and then 4x7 backing off. So this was a day that we're still inducing and accumulating a lot of volume, but it's specifically in there to allow for some recovery to come back around for this day to be decently hard, because I programmed both his primary and secondary day to be pretty hard. I think his primary day, it's not quite as hard, but it's pretty darn close. So I believe this went to a 7 RPE and then has the step progression of a half RPE down from there. So it goes half RPE up each week until a 7. So if you're looking at week 4, primary days at an 8, secondary days at a 7.5, tertiary days at a 7, with obviously the adjustment of the top sets as well that I showed. For squat, very different. This is actually the first block we're trying this to this extent. What we've really found with Zach is that if he has a really hard squat day, it affects him for a while. Last training block, he kind of he went a little too heavy on week 2, and we came back week 3 and we saw almost like an 8 or 9% decrease on his top set. He was still feeling it from the week before. And so what I'm seeing with him is we can only hit those higher intensities so often. If we hit them too often, it really kind of beats him down and puts him in this fatigue debt that we have to try and work out of. And what we had to do last block is then we had to adjust the week 3 secondary day to take out, I think I took out 2 sets, I lowered the intensity, and I did a couple things with accessories to account for that, to say, okay, you fatigued too much, so now I need to make this other day less fatiguing than it usually is to get you to come back around and feel good for the next time. And that's exactly what happened, is he felt good by week 4. So this block, I set it up more to kind of promote week 4 as being the day we finally get there to that heavy set. So he has an 8 RPE top set, and you can see that's actually RPE. He's going to do an 8 RPE, and then it's a step progression up to that by 1 each week. So it goes 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a pretty big jump each week, but that's because I want these first 2 weeks to be light. I don't want any risk of overshooting these weeks or going too heavy, because I want him just to build up workload, build up skill. And then week 3, we're not going to take a shot yet, but we're going to go a little heavier at a 7 RP. And then week 4, that's where he's going to kind of see what he's got for the block and see the accumulation of all the workload. So within that, he also backs off. You can see here, here's the one big difference. Even though we're doing this larger step progression, if we're looking at week 1, it's a 5 RPE, but it's only a 6% back off. So not very much backing off. 6 RPE, week 2, 8% back off. 7 RPE week 3, 9% back off. 8 RPE week 4, 12% back off. So the back offs also accounted for the fact that I know as those RPEs go up, he tends to fatigue more than normal. Like the ratio of how he fatigues on a set at an 8 RPE is not similar to how he fatigues at a 5 or a 6. So I have to account for that he's going to fatigue more from that. So we need to back off a little bit more. So after that, we also have his secondary squat day. I believe this goes to a 7 RPE, and it goes basically the same step progression. It goes 4, 5, 6, 7, going from weeks 1 to 2. Within that, since it's a lower RPE, so he's not going as heavy on this day, you can see on the primary day, he just has 1 top set and then backs off. Here, to kind of give a little bit of an in-between, I give him a slight back off there and then a little bit more of a back off there to kind of account for that. And we can see a difference in rep schemes too. And then we have his tertiary day coming up here. He has very easy work with competition pause squats, 1x2 and 2x2. I believe this goes 6, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3. So it gets pretty easy on that. But again, this is because of data we found that we need this this bigger step progression to week 4 with Zach on the squat, because he tends to fatigue too much too early if we go too hard too soon in the block. He tends to have 1 or 2 really heavy squat days he can do per block based on the model we have. So, and then lastly, we've got Sumo Deadlift. So here we've got Sumo pause deadlifts. We do that because what we found with Zach is that he can handle 1 kind of heavy deadlift a week, but it works much better for him to do a pause deadlift that's self-limiting. He seems to stay a lot healthier. He seems to manage fatigue a lot better just by having that like 8% reduction from having that pause in. So we have a top single, and then that backs off a certain percentage for what is a top set of 3, and then backs off 10% plus the 3% for the 3 sets of 4. And then for his secondary day, we have RDLs. We've done days where we do 2 days a week of sumo deadlifting and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem to go as well. So really, he just has 1 main deadlift day, and the other day is RDL. So a very, very far, I won't say far variation, but it's very much a variation from what he does to get more posterior chain volume, since we're getting plenty of kind of quad volume and other things from squatting. So again, we have differences in all 3 movements here. That squat, bench, and deadlift are all very different in kind of how we're structuring it, and it's structured with him in mind. Like I very much am thinking about what has Zach responded to, how does he fatigue throughout the week, how can we make sure that he can come back to these primary days and feel the best to make sure that we are progressing on those days, but also so that we're actually inducing enough fatigue that we actually have a stimulus. Because I could easily structure things where he always feels really good on his primary days, but is it enough? Like we have to, this very fine line of a happy medium of finding how hard can we push but continually come back around and see progression on those days and how we want to. All right, so that concludes our programming series. We had the really part 1 truly was when I talked about volume versus intensity and intermediate, advanced, and beginner lifters, and kind of how we can structure that depending on kind of where someone's at in their training age. But part 1 of kind of this 2-part video was volume. Make sure to watch that. And obviously we covered intensity today, which is, like I said, that's more so probably what I do a lot of manipulation with when it comes to daily, weekly, and block structure, is manipulating intensity to create this progression model to be able to manage fatigue and have progress, get stronger. So if you have any questions, make sure to comment below. I'd be happy to answer them. Hopefully you made it through all this. I know it's a lot of information to take in, but hopefully it gives you a kind of a better idea of how to kind of conceptualize kind of the differences and the infinite number of ways that you can really be able to kind of manipulate program structure to create these very, very slight progressions within a program. And make sure to subscribe, like the video,